Hey everybody, this is Dave here at Pulp Alley, and today we are talking about how to play the Pulp Alley tabletop adventure game. So I lost my page. Uh-oh. We are starting on page 51 today, and we're going to try and get through page 56. So today, what we're going to be talking about in this video specifically actions, plot points, reward cards, and spoilers. So here we go. Here's a little setup that we have. We have Phantom Ace maybe sitting next to a plot point. I think probably one of the most common sorts of actions that you're going to have in Pulp Alley is doing the plot points. When you put a plot point on the table, and just about every scenario requires you to have a plot point, you're going to want to mark it in some way. You can either use a little counter. You could easily this statue. You could say this statue is the plot point, and then you don't need the marker out there at all. But otherwise, it's always a good idea to make sure that the specific point is located on the table. So a plot point is just one example of performing an action. There are plenty of others. Let's take a look at what we have here in the book. So just real quickly, a few things about who can and when you can perform an action. A character can only perform an action during their own activation. That's pretty important. Remember that. You cannot perform an action during another character's activation. A character cannot perform an action if they are engaged. So if you have a werewolf beating on you, it's not a good time to try to decipher the glyphs on the statue. You cannot move over 6 inches and perform an action in the same turn. So again, an action is anything that takes a little more time or a little more concentration to complete rather than just opening a door, right? Because opening a door is not normally an action. Climbing over a bar, things like that. Everyday drawing a weapon is not an action. Those things are not actions. Those are just part of the normal sequence of pulp events. Actions are things that take a quite a bit of time or concentration to complete. So and are important to the story. Those are the things that you're going to kind of have to deal with as far as actions. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. But before we do that, just finish out this. You cannot perform more than one action per turn. And after a character performs an action, their activation immediately ends. So those are some of the really basic stuff about performing actions. Now, many actions don't actually require a roll at all. You don't have to roll any dice. Some actions will. So keep that in mind. As far as different types of special actions, there are ability actions. So there are characters that have abilities on their card that say they require you to perform that as an action. Yin Ying here is a shapeshifter. So to change into shadow form, she has to perform an action. And then we have Dr. Fang here. He has an action called Cursed Presence, where he can curse an enemy. So those are cool actions. Couple other things to keep in mind. We have something called a full action. If something requires a full action, then you cannot move at all and perform that action. There are long actions that you can do over multiple turns, and then there are opposed checks. And this involves two characters having to roll dice basically against each other. So that gives us the basis of performing an action. So now we're going to look at specifically how to perform a plot point. Plot points are the scores for the scenario. Plot points are what are going to determine the winner and loser for a scenario. So plot points are, supposed to be important. They are the reason you are there. Again, you could just simply call them objectives. So they're the reason that you are there. They are the informant that needs to be talked to. They are the ancient glyphs on the statue that need to be deciphered. They are the missing piece of the map. the missing clue, the bomb that is set to explode in 30 seconds. It's those are the sort of things that plot points are, and they change from one scenario to another. In the As far as the rules are concerned, they're pretty much handled similarly, but they can have special rules for specific scenarios as well. So let's take a look at this one. Let's say old Phantom Ace has moved into contact with the statue here, or the plot point, and he's going to attempt to resolve this plot point. So the first thing that he's going to have to do, and you check here on page 42, it says plot point actions. The first thing that appears is that he has to deal with a peril. Plot points are always considered to be dangerous. They are those places, those points in the story where something bad can happen. So they are those moments in time where if something can go wrong, if something can be dangerous, if there's a shot from the dark, if there is a trap, if there's something like that that's going on, these are the sort of places that they happen. So plot points are always those moments that before you actually get to decipher the glyphs or talk to the informant, you have to make sure you are safe. So the first thing that you do is draw a peril. And you determine that randomly by drawing the top card off the fortune deck. And that's going to tell you what the challenge is. Look there. So he has to roll one success with might. And we can look at the Pulp Alley character card there for Phantom Ace. We know he has 3 die 10 in might. So he picks up 3 die 10 and he rolls it. He has to get at least one of his dice have to be a 4 or better. And he got it. One success. The one success he needed. And he got past the peril. So after you get past the peril, then you can move on to the plot point challenge itself. And for that, it's basically the same thing. You draw another challenge. So we'll draw another challenge here at random. And now the challenge is, okay, it's a little bit harder now. 2 with finesse or cunning. Okay, luckily Phantom Ace has 3 die 10 in finesse. So he rolls those dice. He gets the 2 successes he needed, and the plot point is completed. So he has moved up to the statue. He has found the hidden glyphs on the strange ancient statue, and he understands, aha, now I know where the entrance to the hidden cave is. And after you complete a plot point, you get to draw a reward card, and those are the blue back cards here. So you get to draw one at random, and there it is. That is your reward. And you can see that it has 2 sections in it. Scenario reward, which is the top portion of the card, and then it has a league reward at the bottom. The only part that is used during the scenario is the scenario reward. So this is attached to Phantom Ace, and now we know that once per turn, he can discard a card out of his hand to gain a +1 brawl or might until the end of the turn. That's a pretty good bonus. That's really nice. That only applies to the character that has the reward. And it only applies while it is attached, and it only applies for the duration of the scenario. After the scenario is done, the scenario reward no longer applies. And then you get, if you're still holding that card at the end of the scenario, you get the bonus, the reward that is written at the bottom of the card. So he would gain extra resources to use in their next scenario. Does that make sense? All right, let's see where we're at now. I think we covered a lot of ground there. The next thing is a bunch of cool examples there. Then it talks about holding a plot point. So after you pick up that reward card, remember how we did that, where we attached the reward card to Phantom Ace? That kind of shows that he has that information. Now there are such things that are called no drop plot points, and then there are things that can be dropped. So if he found a key hidden in the mouth of that statue, well, that could be something that could be dropped. So as he goes off wandering around the table, he could drop that. And that's where we get into dropping a plot point. If you go down, then you drop a plot point. You can also hand off plot points. If Phantom Ace picked up that key and decided he wanted to hand it over to Rutherford, he could do that as well. That brings us to the reward cards. We pretty much talked about reward cards. The scenario portion applies during the scenario. The league reward applies if you hold on to it until the end of the scenario. Now, there are such a things as spoilers. So these are special things that can apply. I'd say maybe only about 10% of our published scenarios include spoilers. So you don't have to include spoilers in every scenario. What a spoiler is basically when you draw your reward card, and what do you know? Out of all of the stack, you draw something that looks a little bit like this. Wah, wah, wah. You draw a red herring or a surprise twist or something like that. And this throws a wrench into the works and says, you did not find what you thought you found. And that's a big part, right? That's a big part of action adventure stories and the pulps and all that sort of stuff. So take it in the stride, the part of the story that it's intended to be. It's when everything's going right and boom, something goes wrong and it wasn't what you thought it was. Be sure and leave a question if you have any questions about any of these things. I know I go through it pretty quick and I don't cover everything. So, also, if you have suggestions, this is a great time to leave a comment for that as well. And make sure you get subscribed to our little channel, hit the like button and the bell. And we're going to see you next time. Bye, everybody.